everyone, welcome back to Liz Sews and day 2 of the Boylston Bra Sew Along by Orange Lingerie. If you missed day 1, we put together the cups and strap extensions. Please make sure to check it out. I'll try to put a link of it up here for day 1. So in day 2, we're going to make the bridge and cradle of the bra and then attach the cups that we made yesterday into that. Let's get started. The first step to making the band is we're gonna put the bridge together. So I have my fashion fabric and my lining, and I'm going to put the right sides together, and I'm going to stitch along the very top at 1/4 inch with a straight stitch. Once you've done that, you can flip your lining piece out and then edge stitch once again on the lining side, just 1/8 inch away from that seam. Once you've done that, it should look something like this, and that'll just help it from rolling over to the outside as you move on to the next couple of steps. So I'm going to set this aside for a second and get my back band as well as the 2 outer cradle pieces. So I'm going to set my back band down. This is the scoop, so this is going to be the top of the band, and this is the bottom of the band. I'm going to take my cradle piece and I'm going to take the fashion fabric and put it right sides together and pin that into place. Then flip it over to the back and take the lining fabric and pin that into place. We're going to stitch along this edge at 1/4 inch with a straight stitch. Once you've done that, it should look something like this. Then you just want to fold the 2 outer cradle pieces out, and we can see how that seam is encased all the way in there. And then we're going to take a scant of 1/8 inch and sew along the cradle side just 1/8 inch away from that seam, and that's going to keep everything nice and in place and laying flat. So here's what it looks like once you have done that. So I'm just go ahead and repeat that for the other side as well. So here we have our 2 that we've made. Now the last step is going to be to attach the bridge in between the 2. So we're going to take our bridge piece that we've already put together, make sure that the lining is matching up, and we're going to sew that to the cradle with right sides together at 1/4 inch. So it should look like that. So once you have both sides of the bridge attached, you should have something that looks like this. So you will see that these are sort of raw edges. However, these do get covered up later on with the elastic and the channeling. But for now, all I'm going to do is top stitch down on either side of that seam allowance just to keep it flat. But I'm going to leave it with those exposed raw edges. So once you top stitch the seam allowances down, it should look something like this. So if we bring back our cups that we made yesterday, just going to start pinning this in place around this curve all the way up into the very end. It's a little bit difficult having 2 opposing curves, but as long as you work with it, you should be able to get it sort of situated into there fairly smoothly. So here I have my cup sort of pinned into the band. What I'm going to do is take a straight stitch at 1/4 inch seam allowance and go around that cup so that it is secured into place. So here's what it looks like once it is sewn into place. Now I'm just going to repeat that for the other cup, pinning it and sewing it into place. So now you have something that looks like this, which is really starting to look like a bra. The last thing we're going to do today is just tack in the underwire channeling along this line. So for underwire channeling, there's a couple of options. You can use plush, which is pretty comfortable, or you can also use this stuff, which I purchased from Bravo Bella Bras, and it's essentially just like a double fold bias tape made out of some strong nylon that's been sewn together. So theoretically, you could make your own underwire channeling if you wanted, be using your fashion fabric, making double fold bias tape, and then stitching up that free edge. But I just find it's a lot easier to purchase store-bought ones. So the way that we're going to insert this channeling, so we have our seam allowance where the cup attaches to the cradle. We want to go on the cup side of that seam allowance. We're going to line up the edge of our underwire channeling to that line of stitching where the cup attaches to the cradle, and we're just going to sew the channeling onto the seam allowance. So you don't want to see any of that stitching from the outside. It won't be visible. You're just sewing onto this excess fabric that's in the seam allowance. I always find this part a little bit tricky, so I thought it would be helpful if I showed you how I set the machine up. So we have the cup, the whole bra is over here. We just have that seam allowance extending out. And then I lay my underwire channeling on top of it and set down the presser foot. Now I like to keep my underwire channeling aligned with the edge of my presser foot like this. Then I will move my needle over 2 spaces, and that just gets me so I'm close to the edge, so I'm not taking up really any of the space of the underwire channeling. I'm just tacking it on along the edge. So I'm going to start running this stitch across the wire. So right now I'm at the center front, and I'm going to sew it out until I get to the sides. I'm going to leave about 1.5 inches unsewn when I get to the side seam of this, just because we're going to be putting an elastic later. So now I've gotten to the underarm side of the cup, and I'm going to stop right about here, which is where that cross seam ends. I'm just going to back tack just to make sure it's secure, and I'll trim off the excess channeling. So once you have your channeling sewn into place, and here's our free edge on the underarm, you also want to make sure to close off the bit that's by the center front on the bridge. All I do is, you can see, I just go back and forth about 4 or 5 times just to make sure that's really, really secure. That concludes day 2 of the Boylston Bra sew along. I hope you guys have enjoyed it so far. Come back tomorrow where we will finish up our bra by attaching all the elastics, the straps, the hook and eyes, and finally the wires.